The galaxy had never seen a leader like Saren Call. She was human, born on the dusty, forgotten planet of Vera 9, a world little more than rock and iron with skies streaked by storms and moons that hung low like watchful eyes. From a young age, Saren knew she was different. While other children ran through the mines and scraped their hands on machinery, she studied patterns in the stars. She traced the paths of comets and listened to the whispers of interstellar winds, learning lessons that no teacher could give. Her family struggled to survive, scraping a living from the barren soil and struggling to make enough energy credits to pay the colony's taxes. Her parents were practical, kind, and cautious. They loved her but did not understand the fire in her mind. Saren's father often said she would not find happiness on Vera 9, while her mother warned her to keep her head down. But Saren could not be ordinary. Even as a child, she dreamt of a galaxy she would one day command, a galaxy united not by fear or brute force, but by intellect, diplomacy, and courage. By the time she reached adolescence, Saren had already gained a reputation among her peers. In the colony, cleverness was a currency almost as valuable as energy crystals, and she spent hours teaching younger children to solve problems faster, to see beyond what was immediately in front of them. She developed strategies for everything, from rationing food to navigating asteroid storms, and the older miners, initially skeptical of her ideas, began to notice how often her predictions came true. She was small, quiet, and unassuming, but her mind was a force as relentless as the storms on Vera 9. When she was 16, the colony faced a crisis. A rogue mining company had claimed ownership of the planet's primary resource veins, demanding exorbitant fees and threatening to remove the settlers entirely. The adults panicked. They had no weapons, no fleet, no allies. Yet Saren stepped forward. Using only her wit and knowledge of the local terrain, she organized a series of clever traps and diversions. She coordinated the villagers to exploit weaknesses in the company's operations, moving supplies in secret, disrupting the enemy's communications, and predicting their movements with astonishing accuracy. By the end of the week, the company retreated, frustrated, and humiliated. The colony celebrated Saren as a hero, though she accepted the praise quietly, knowing that this was only a taste of the challenges that awaited her. That night, as she watched the twin moons rise over the jagged cliffs, she realized that survival was not enough. She wanted more. She wanted to understand the galaxy, to influence it, and to leave a mark so profound that no power could ignore her. The opportunity came sooner than anyone expected. A visiting Terran diplomat noticed her. They were impressed by her intelligence and her ability to command respect without demanding it. They offered her an education aboard a fleet academy orbiting a distant star system, an offer that would change her life forever. Leaving Vera 9 was difficult. She said goodbye to her parents, promising to return one day, though she knew that once she stepped into the larger galaxy, there would be no going back. At the academy, Saren's abilities only grew. She absorbed knowledge like a sponge, mastering tactics, diplomacy, and languages from across the galaxy. She excelled in simulations of interstellar war, often outsmarting instructors and fellow cadets alike. Her peers admired her but also feared her, sensing that she was destined for greatness beyond their understanding. Saren did not seek friendship or popularity. She sought mastery, knowledge, and the ability to shape outcomes rather than react to them. Her rise was not without challenge. Many alien species in the academy dismissed her because she was human. The Xyler, a race of sharp-edged beings with lightning-fast reflexes, considered humans weak. The Velari, known for their telepathic abilities, thought they could easily outmaneuver her mind. Saren faced constant skepticism, ridicule, and tests meant to break her confidence, but she thrived in adversity. She learned to predict the Xyler's movements in simulations, turning their speed against them, and she discovered subtle ways to outthink the Velari, exploiting gaps in their telepathy with logic they could not anticipate. By the time she graduated, Saren Call was already a name whispered across the academy, a human who had consistently outperformed beings considered far superior. The galaxy was beginning to take notice, though most did not yet understand the depth of her vision. She did not seek glory for herself. She sought a galaxy where order and justice could flourish, where humans, and all races, could thrive through intellect, creativity, and courage rather than through domination alone. Her first posting as a strategist for the Terran Dominion was a test of her abilities on a grand scale. She was assigned to the Rim sectors, a region plagued by piracy, alien raids, and rebellion. Conventional fleets had failed to maintain peace there, and her superiors expected her to succeed or die trying. Saren approached the challenge with precision. She studied star charts, mapped trade routes, and analyzed alien behavior patterns. She did not rely on brute force. She relied on ingenuity. Using small, agile fleets and innovative tactics, she protected convoys, disrupted pirate operations, and built alliances with local governors. It was during this time that she first faced the reality of leadership. She realized that commanding a fleet or winning battles was only part of the challenge. Keeping peace required empathy, understanding cultural differences, and sometimes bending strict rules for the greater good. Saren learned that intelligence without heart could win battles but would fail to win loyalty. It was a lesson she would carry into every corner of the galaxy she would one day rule. Over the next decade, Saren's reputation grew. She brokered treaties that others believed impossible, united factions that had been at war for centuries, and demonstrated that humans could thrive where many alien civilizations assumed they would fail. By the time she was in her early 30s, she had earned the title of Supreme Chancellor of the Terran Dominion, effectively the leader of human-occupied sectors. But Saren did not stop there. She dreamed bigger. She saw a galaxy divided not by stars but by distrust, and she was determined to unite it under one banner, not through fear, but through strategy, wisdom, and the undeniable power of the human mind. Yet with every victory there was a cost. Saren's life became increasingly isolated. Advisors and generals deferred to her decisions without question. Friends became rare, and she grew distant from anyone who might challenge her authority or pierce the calm facade she presented to the galaxy. Late at night, in the quiet of her private quarters aboard the flagship Dominion's Heart, she stared at holographic star maps and wondered if the price was too high. The galaxy was hers, but the warmth of human connection, the laughter, the companionship, the simple moments of shared joy was absent. She had gained everything, yet part of her wondered if she had given up too much to get it. Her solitude was interrupted by subtle signs of the galaxy's unpredictability. Even the most loyal advisors had their doubts. Alien leaders, though outwardly obedient, harbored secret ambitions. And for the first time in her life, Saren sensed that intelligence and strategy might not be enough. The galaxy had a pulse of its own, a rhythm she could calculate but not always control. It was during this time that Saren first heard whispers of Kale, a human who moved between systems almost like a ghost, whose knowledge of the galaxy was said to rival her own. Some said he was a rogue scholar, others a rebel, and some claimed he was merely a myth. The intrigue sparked something in Saren she had not felt in years, a mixture of curiosity, caution, and a faint, unacknowledged excitement. Could someone exist who challenged her mind, who saw the galaxy as she did, yet remained free of her responsibilities? Saren decided she would find out, not for glory, not for power, but because the spark of human connection, long suppressed, was calling to her. She had spent her life building the galaxy, mastering fleets, treaties, and alliances, yet now she realized that the galaxy would also test her in ways her mind alone could not conquer. Her heart, which she had learned to ignore, had begun to stir. As the twin suns of the Herald system rose over the metallic horizon of the capital world, Saren stood at the observation deck of the Dominion's Heart. The galaxy stretched before her, infinite, untamed, and full of possibilities. She was the ruler of it all, yet for the first time she wondered not about strategy or conquest, but about the life she had yet to live, the connections she had yet to make, and the human experiences she had denied herself in pursuit of power. The galaxy waited for her next move, and Saren Call, human, brilliant, and alone, was ready to face it, not just with her mind, but with the stirrings of a heart that refused to remain silent. Even the most brilliant rulers could not see everything, and Saren Call was beginning to learn this. She had conquered challenges no human had ever faced, united systems that had waged wars for centuries, and gained the loyalty of allies and enemies alike. Yet whispers of unrest began to reach her across the galaxy. Alien factions that had once pledged loyalty now tested her patience, launching small attacks or quietly resisting her trade regulations. The galaxy was alive with subtle currents of rebellion, and even Saren's unmatched mind could not control every detail. It was during this turbulent time that she first heard of Kale. He was a human like her, but unlike any human she had ever encountered. Rumors painted him in many colors, a scholar who knew every alien language, a rogue operative who could slip past any patrol, a strategist who had foiled entire fleets without firing a single shot. Some whispered that he had once single-handedly prevented a civil war on a distant system. Others said he disappeared as quickly as he arrived, leaving only a signature mark of cleverness behind. Intrigued, Saren summoned her intelligence officers. "Find him," she said, her voice calm but carrying the authority of someone who had never been denied. "I want to know who he is and why he moves through the galaxy as if it were his own." He moved freely between human and alien territories, never staying in one system for long. His motives were unknown, his alliances unclear. But the more Saren learned about him, the more she recognized a quality she rarely found in others. He was not intimidated by her reputation. Most humans and aliens alike deferred to her authority, feared her strategies, or obeyed her orders out of necessity. Kale did none of these. Curiosity, which Saren had long buried beneath layers of duty, began to awaken. She wanted to meet him, not as an empress commanding obedience, but as a human seeking understanding. She prepared a discreet expedition to intercept Kale in a neutral system known as Orcs, a sprawling nebula cluster where no official fleet could easily monitor him. She disguised her presence, sending only a small, nimble reconnaissance vessel under her direct command. When she finally found Kale, he was nothing like she expected. He did not wear a uniform or display ranks. He moved among traders and alien scholars as if he belonged, speaking in calm, measured tones that drew attention without demanding it. His eyes held intelligence, curiosity, and a quiet amusement that hinted he had seen more than most could imagine. Saren watched from the shadows, feeling something she had not felt in years, a spark of excitement that had nothing to do with politics, conquest, or strategy. Kale noticed her presence almost immediately, though Saren suspected he had been aware from the start. He approached her with a slow, confident stride, and for the first time she felt the chill of someone who could match her mind step for step. "You're Saren Call," he said. "I've heard of you, the human who united stars and silenced wars, and yet you look smaller than I expected." "I've heard many stories." Kale answered, but he also asked questions of her, questions about why she ruled the way she did, how she balanced the needs of countless worlds, and what drove her beyond ambition. His words challenged her, not by threatening her power, but by forcing her to reflect on her choices. As the conversation continued, Saren realized she had not spoken this freely with anyone in years. Advisors and generals deferred to her judgment. Allies respected her intellect but rarely questioned it. Kale, however, spoke as an equal. He offered ideas she had never considered, pointed out potential risks she had overlooked, and even disagreed with her decisions in ways that did not anger her but sharpened her mind. She felt a strange mix of admiration and unease. The galaxy had tested her at every turn, yet Kale's presence reminded her of something she had long ignored: the human heart. He was more than cleverness and strategy. He understood nuance, emotion, and the subtle power of empathy. She realized that her focus on intellect and order had left gaps in her understanding, gaps that Kale seemed able to fill effortlessly. Days passed, and Saren found herself seeking his counsel again and again. They traveled together to remote sectors, studying conflicts, meeting with alien leaders, and observing human settlements. Kale's approach was unorthodox. He valued observation over action, subtlety over confrontation, and often solved problems in ways Saren would never have imagined. Yet time and again, his strategies worked. Together, they achieved outcomes that neither could have accomplished alone. Amid the challenges, Saren began to feel something unfamiliar: trust. She had spent her entire life controlling every detail, doubting every advisor, and relying only on her own abilities. But with Kale, she could let go, if only slightly, and witness his brilliance in action. She realized that humans were strongest when they combined intellect with connection, strategy with empathy, and control with trust. The turning point came during a diplomatic mission to the Dravari cluster, a region where humans had little influence and alien factions were suspicious of outsiders. Saren's fleet was negotiating a trade agreement when a faction of Xylar extremists ambushed the talks. Violence erupted, and the human delegation was trapped. Saren quickly calculated escape routes, fleet maneuvers, and potential casualties. Her mind worked like a supercomputer, yet she found herself pausing, considering Kale's suggestions rather than acting alone. Together, they orchestrated a flawless countermove. Kale's unconventional tactics drew the extremists away, while Saren's fleet secured the diplomats and civilians. By the time the dust settled, the delegation was safe, the extremists neutralized, and Saren realized something profound: victory was sweeter when shared. She had spent years conquering alone, yet the feeling of accomplishment beside someone who understood her completely, who challenged her mind without threatening her heart, was something entirely new. After the mission, they retreated to a quiet orbital station on the edge of the cluster. Saren reflected on the events of the past days. Kale had proven his loyalty, intelligence, and bravery. Yet more than that, he had awakened something in her, a longing for connection she had long ignored. She had devoted her life entirely to ruling, suppressing personal feelings and desires, and yet her heart was stirring in ways she could not ignore. Kale, sensing her thoughts, spoke quietly. "You rule the galaxy, Saren. Few can claim that, yet I sense a part of you still searching. Do you ever wonder if power is enough? Perhaps it must be found in the spaces between, the quiet moments, the choices we make, the people we trust." She realized that ruling the galaxy was not just about strategy and intelligence. It was about understanding life, connection, and the courage to act with both wisdom and compassion. Days turned into weeks, and Saren's collaboration with Kale deepened. Together, they visited planets struggling under corrupt governors, mediated disputes between alien systems, and uncovered plots that threatened the fragile peace of the Dominion. Kale's insight often led to peaceful solutions where others would have resorted to force. And every time Saren witnessed his cleverness, his humanity, and his courage, she felt the stirrings of a heart she had long kept hidden. Yet the galaxy was never still. News arrived of a new threat, an alliance of alien warlords planning to exploit weaknesses in human-controlled sectors. Their fleets were vast, their armies disciplined, and their intentions deadly. Saren could sense that her intellect alone might not be enough this time. She would need allies she could trust completely, and for the first time, she considered that Kale might not only be a partner in strategy, but also a partner in life, someone whose perspective and courage could complement her own. As she gazed out at the swirling stars from the observation deck of the Dominion's heart, she understood a truth she had long denied. Power without connection was hollow. Strategy without empathy was incomplete. And no matter how far she had come, her heart had a voice of its own, one that refused to be silenced by duty or ambition. Kale's presence beside her was a quiet reminder that even the ruler of the galaxy could not ignore the human heart. It could be as unpredictable as the stars themselves, yet it could also be the galaxy's greatest strength. Saren smiled faintly, realizing that the journey ahead would challenge her in ways she had never imagined, not merely as a ruler, but as a human being who had to balance intellect with emotion, duty with desire, and strategy with heart. And for the first time in her life, she felt a sense of anticipation rather than calculation. The galaxy awaited, full of danger, opportunity, and wonder. And Saren Call, human, brilliant, and awakening to the stirrings of her own heart, was ready to face it, not alone, but with someone who had already begun to understand the power of what it meant to be human. The galaxy rarely gave anyone a moment of peace, and for Saren Call, that truth had become impossible to ignore. Even as she began to understand the stirrings of her heart, even as she began to trust Kale and appreciate the value of connection alongside intellect, a threat unlike any she had faced emerged from the shadows. It began with reports of fleet movements along the outer rim sectors, ships appearing and disappearing in hyperspace lanes that had long been considered secure. Intelligence officers described it as an invasion, though the origin was uncertain. Alien factions that had remained neutral for decades suddenly declared war, and old enemies moved with precision that suggested careful planning, not opportunism. The numbers alone were staggering. Hundreds of warships, thousands of soldiers, and weapons capable of destroying entire colonies. Saren's mind raced through calculations, probabilities, and potential outcomes. She had faced threats before, but the scale of this assault was unprecedented. Kale arrived on the bridge of the Dominion's heart, calm as always, yet Saren could sense the sharpness of his mind beneath that calm. "They're not just testing us," he said. "They're confident we will respond in predictable ways." "That is their mistake. Humans are anything but predictable." The first sign of battle came in the system of Orioles, a key trade hub that had been a center of human influence for decades. Alien warships appeared in the orbital lanes without warning, targeting civilian stations and supply convoys. Saren coordinated the defense, issuing orders to her fleet while simultaneously monitoring the movement of enemy ships. Her strategies were precise, her commands calculated, and yet even as she directed every maneuver, she felt a new awareness. She could not do this alone. She needed Kale's creativity and intuition. Kale suggested a maneuver Saren had never considered, splitting her fleet into smaller, agile units and using decoys to lure the enemy into vulnerable positions. It was risky. If any unit failed, entire colonies could be destroyed, but it leveraged the human ability to think unpredictably. Saren agreed, trusting Kale's judgment and the instincts she had learned to value alongside her own calculations. The battle began at the edge of Aurealis's asteroid belt. Enemy ships swarmed like dark clouds, moving with mechanical precision. Saren's fleet, smaller but more agile, engaged in a series of maneuvers designed to confuse and fragment the attackers. Kale directed specialized squadrons through asteroid fields, using the terrain as natural cover, while Saren's main fleet focused on protecting civilians and essential infrastructure. Hours passed, and the tide of the battle shifted with each clever maneuver. Saren watched the holographic displays, calculating trajectories and predicting enemy responses, but always with Kale's voice guiding her to consider the unexpected. His insight revealed weaknesses she could exploit, patterns she might have overlooked, and possibilities beyond her traditional calculations. Despite the chaos, Saren felt a sense of exhilaration. This was not merely a battle of firepower, it was a battle of minds. The alien commanders assumed humans were predictable, logical, and therefore controllable. They underestimated the human capacity for innovation, intuition, and adaptability. Together, Saren and Kale demonstrated what humans could achieve when intellect was combined with trust, courage, and collaboration. As night fell on Aurealis, the enemy fleet retreated, suffering losses that would take months to replace. Colonies were safe, supply lines remained intact, and Saren's fleet had achieved a victory that many had thought impossible. Yet the victory was not complete. The enemy had not been destroyed, they had only been repelled, and Saren knew they would return, stronger and more determined. The aftermath brought both relief and reflection. Saren walked the corridors of the Dominion's heart, reviewing reports and tending to the needs of her people. Kale followed, his calm presence a steady counterbalance to the tension that always clung to her after battle. "You fought well," he said quietly, "but this is only the beginning. They will adapt, and we must be ready to adapt as well." Victory was no longer simply about domination. It was about responsibility, compassion, and the courage to act even when the outcome was uncertain. Over the following weeks, Saren focused on fortifying the rim sectors. She established advanced monitoring stations, coordinated with allied alien systems, and implemented training programs for local defense forces. Kale continued to offer insights, not only in tactics but in diplomacy. He suggested negotiations with neutral factions, subtle alliances with alien traders, and creative solutions to maintain the fragile balance of power. Through it all, Saren found herself thinking about Kale more often than she expected. His presence was a reminder that even in the midst of endless calculations, political maneuvers, and life-or-death decisions, there was room for human connection. She had spent decades suppressing emotions, viewing them as distractions, yet she realized they were not weaknesses. Her heart, which she had long silenced, was now a source of clarity, courage, and motivation. The true test came when a coalition of alien warlords launched a massive, coordinated attack across multiple systems simultaneously. It was a strategy designed to stretch the Dominion's defenses to breaking point. Saren faced a decision that no ruler wanted to make: divide her forces and risk losing critical systems, or concentrate them and leave other colonies vulnerable. Every choice carried immense consequences. Kale approached her privately, presenting an alternative. "The key is not to fight them all directly," he explained. "We create points of strength, and we use deception, misdirection, and speed to disrupt their coordination. If we make them fight each other instead of us, we gain the advantage." She realized he was right. By exploiting the enemy's assumptions, by acting unpredictably and coordinating with intelligence from allied systems, they could turn a disadvantage into an advantage. For the first time in a long time, she felt the thrill of true partnership, not merely relying on advisors, but working alongside someone whose mind complemented her own. The battle began across 3 star systems simultaneously. Saren's fleet, smaller but strategically placed, engaged in precision strikes while decoy units lured the enemy into traps. Kale's insights proved invaluable, predicting movements and exploiting weaknesses she had not foreseen. Colonies that would have been destroyed were saved, and enemy forces were systematically neutralized without unnecessary loss of civilian life. Hours turned into days, and exhaustion weighed heavily on Saren and her fleet. Yet the results were undeniable. The coalition's advance had been halted, their fleet scattered, and their morale broken. The Dominion had survived, and once again the ingenuity, adaptability, and courage of humans had proven decisive. After the battle, Saren stood on the observation deck looking out at the stars. The galaxy was vast, dangerous, and unpredictable, yet it was also full of potential. She realized that her strength was not merely in intellect or strategy, but in her ability to embrace the full range of human qualities, courage, empathy, and the willingness to trust and collaborate. Kale joined her silently, and for a moment they simply watched the stars together. "You could have done it alone," he said softly, "but it would not have been the same. Humans are strongest when they act together, when hearts and minds are aligned. And I see that perhaps my greatest challenge is not conquering the galaxy, but understanding it, and myself, fully." With Kale, with her allies, and with the understanding that her heart could guide her as much as her mind, she was ready to face whatever the stars had in store. The galaxy had tested her, shaped her, and challenged her. Now it was time for her to respond not only as a ruler but as a human, a leader whose intellect, courage, and heart together could change the course of history. The victory across the rim sectors brought relief, yet Saren Call knew the calm would not last. Battles had been won, fleets had survived, and colonies were safe, but the galaxy was a living web of ambition, mistrust, and secrets. Even as she worked to rebuild systems damaged by the fighting, Saren realized that threats were not always external. Some dangers came from within, from those who questioned her rule, doubted her decisions, or resented her authority. But this time, her focus shifted from fleets and politics to something she had long denied, her own heart. The presence of Kale had changed the rhythm of her life. She found herself considering more than strategies and outcomes. She thought of loyalty, connection, and moments that transcended duty. She had spent decades ruling with precision, suppressing emotion, and trusting only herself, yet now she faced the strange challenge of balancing personal feelings with the responsibilities of an empress. Kale had become more than an advisor. He was a partner in thought, a companion in action, and an unexpected anchor in the storm of her life. His understanding of the galaxy matched her own, and his insight into human nature reminded her that intellect alone was not enough to lead effectively. Yet the feelings that Saren had long denied, trust, admiration, even a quiet, unspoken affection, were growing, and she felt the unfamiliar tension of a heart awakening. One evening, Saren convened her council to discuss reconstruction efforts in the rim sectors. Representatives from human and alien worlds gathered, some still wary after the recent conflict. Plans were laid, resources allocated, and defensive positions reinforced. The council respected her authority, but Saren noticed subtle glances exchanged between alien leaders, questions of loyalty, suspicion of her decisions. It was a reminder that ruling a galaxy required constant vigilance. After the council meeting, she walked alone to the observation deck, Kale following silently. The twin suns of the Vera system set in streaks of orange and gold, reflecting off the hull of the Dominion's heart. "You think too much about what others see," Kale said gently. "Sometimes the galaxy watches for your actions, not your intentions. But you have to act according to what you believe is right, not just what others expect. The human heart is unpredictable, but that is its power. You've spent years trusting only your mind. Perhaps it is time to trust something else as well." That night, as she reviewed reports of the sectors under her control, Saren realized she was beginning to see patterns in people, not just fleets or trade routes. She could predict the intentions of alien leaders, anticipate the movements of rebels, and understand the unspoken concerns of colonists. Her intellect remained sharp, but now her awareness included empathy, intuition, and an appreciation for connection. The test came sooner than expected. Intelligence reports indicated a conspiracy among a group of human governors. They had begun to secretly support a faction of alien warlords, funneling supplies and information that could destabilize the Dominion. Saren was faced with a dilemma: act swiftly and risk alienating the governors she relied upon, or gather more evidence and risk letting the conspiracy grow. She could not rely on calculation alone. She needed understanding, patience, and insight into the hearts of those involved. Kale suggested a cautious approach. Meet them, speak to them directly, and see what drives them. Do not assume betrayal without proof. Sometimes fear or misunderstanding can masquerade as treachery. By listening and addressing their concerns, Saren diffused the tension without firing a single weapon. The experience taught her that true leadership required more than orders and strategy. It required understanding the hearts of those she governed. Amid these political challenges, Saren's personal struggle became more pronounced. She realized that Kale was no longer just a trusted advisor. He had become someone she cared for deeply. The thought startled her. She had spent her life prioritizing duty above all else, suppressing any personal attachments, yet here was a human she respected, admired, and increasingly depended upon. She wrestled with guilt and uncertainty. Could she allow herself to embrace personal feelings without weakening her rule? The answer came unexpectedly. A distress signal arrived from the outer system of Urindor, a human colony under attack from alien mercenaries. Kale was among the first to analyze the situation, proposing a rapid response strategy that required precise coordination and trust between multiple fleets. Saren realized that success depended not on orders alone, but on mutual reliance, intuition, and shared courage. The battle at Urindor was intense. Alien forces used unconventional tactics, attempting to divide Saren's fleet and strike vulnerable points. Yet Saren, guided by both intellect and intuition, anticipated their moves. Kale coordinated defensive squadrons and diversionary attacks, creating confusion in the enemy ranks. Civilians were evacuated, supply stations defended, and alien attackers neutralized with minimal loss of life. In the aftermath, Saren visited the colony personally. She walked through streets scorched by battle, met survivors, and listened to their stories. She realized that the galaxy was not simply a map of stars and systems. It was a network of lives, dreams, and struggles. Her heart ached for those who had suffered, yet it also filled with pride at the resilience and ingenuity of her people. She understood now that ruling was not about domination, but about protection, inspiration, and connection. Kale observed her quietly, sensing her reflections. "You're learning," he said softly, "not just to rule, but to lead. There's a difference." Saren found herself sharing moments with Kale beyond strategy and battle plans. They discussed human culture, alien philosophy, and even personal memories from their lives before the Dominion. These conversations, simple yet profound, reminded her that connection was as essential to leadership as intellect or courage. Yet the galaxy never waited for reflection. News arrived that the alien warlords were regrouping, seeking new allies and devising strategies to challenge the Dominion once more. Saren knew that more battles would come, but she also knew that she would face them differently. She was no longer a ruler who relied solely on calculation. She was a leader who combined strategy with empathy, intellect with intuition, and duty with heart. The true test of this transformation came during a council meeting when Kale's life was unexpectedly threatened. A faction of alien diplomats, resentful of his influence over Saren, attempted a covert attack during negotiations. The assassination attempt was subtle, almost undetectable, but Saren's instincts, heightened by her awareness of Kale's importance both strategically and personally, allowed her to intervene in time. The threat was neutralized and Kale was unharmed. For the first time, Saren confronted the truth of her feelings openly. She realized that her heart had defied her, rising above years of discipline and isolation. She cared deeply for Kale, not merely as an ally, but as someone whose presence enriched her life and whose partnership strengthened her rule. The acknowledgement was both terrifying and liberating. To allow herself to care was to risk distraction, vulnerability, and conflict, but to deny it was to deny part of herself. That evening, they stood together on the observation deck of the Dominion's heart. The stars stretched endlessly before them, infinite and mysterious. Saren felt the weight of responsibility pressing down, yet she also felt something she had long suppressed: hope, connection, and the quiet joy of recognizing that even a ruler of the galaxy could embrace love and trust without losing strength. "You saved him," Kale said quietly, referring to himself. "And you saved the Council. You did not hesitate, even though the cost could have been high. It defies calculation, logic, and expectation, and yet it can guide us better than any strategy alone." It was not weakness, it was the most human form of strength. In the following days, Saren began to integrate this understanding into her rule. She met with alien and human leaders not only to give orders, but to listen, to understand, and to inspire. She considered the lives affected by her decisions, the hopes and fears of those who looked to her for guidance, and the subtle bonds that connected the galaxy. Every decision carried weight, yet every choice was now informed not only by intellect, but by empathy. As the stars shifted in their orbits and new threats began to stir on the horizon, Saren understood that her journey was far from over. Battles, politics, and challenges would continue, but she faced them with a new awareness. The galaxy could be conquered with strategy, but it could be truly united with heart. And so, standing beside Kale, Saren Call, the human who had ruled fleets, united systems, and outwitted empires, embraced a truth she had long denied, that her heart, once silenced by duty, was not a burden but a strength. It had defied her, yes, but in doing so, it had made her not only a ruler but a leader worthy of the galaxy she had fought to protect. The journey ahead promised danger, intrigue, and challenge, but Saren no longer faced it alone. With Kale by her side, and with the courage to trust both mind and heart, she was ready to meet whatever the stars, and the galaxy itself, would demand. The galaxy was alive with tension. Even after years of careful rule, Saren Call knew that peace was fragile and that threats always lingered in shadowed corners of space. The coalition of alien warlords she had fought before was regrouping, stronger and more determined than ever. Rumors of betrayals among human governors persisted, and new factions of aliens eyed the Terran Dominion's systems with envy. Every decision mattered. Every misstep could ignite chaos across hundreds of star systems. Yet Saren felt something she had never experienced in her years of command, a quiet confidence, rooted not only in intellect and strategy, but in trust, connection, and understanding. Kale's presence at her side was more than comfort. It was an extension of her mind and heart, a partnership that strengthened every decision she made. Together they had faced battles, conspiracies, and political storms, and together they had survived. When the intelligence reports confirmed the final approach of the warlord's fleet, Saren gathered her advisors. The fleet was vast, larger than anything she had faced before, with ships bristling with weapons capable of obliterating entire colonies. But she did not panic. Her mind mapped out every possible scenario, her heart reminded her of the people she was sworn to protect, and her spirit drew strength from the trust she shared with Kale. "They are strong," she said, her voice calm but firm. "But we are human. We are adaptable, creative, and courageous. We will not simply face them with force alone. We will outthink them, outmaneuver them, and protect every system under our care. It will be a test of everything we are and everything we can become." Instead, she divided her forces into smaller, flexible units, deploying them across multiple vectors to confuse and fragment the attackers. Kale's strategies complemented hers perfectly, predicting enemy movements, setting traps, and orchestrating diversions that drew enemy ships into vulnerable positions. For hours, the battle raged. Lasers streaked across the void, shields flared, and missiles danced like fire through space. Saren remained calm, issuing orders with precision, her mind balancing countless variables at once. Yet she was not alone in her calculations. Kale's insight added dimensions she could not have foreseen, revealing weaknesses in the enemy formations and opportunities to protect civilian colonies while striking strategically. The turning point came when the enemy attempted a coordinated assault on the colony of Vera Prime, the capital of the Outer Rim sectors. It was a direct challenge to Saren herself, a message meant to undermine her authority. But Saren had anticipated it. She personally led a squadron of ships in a daring flanking maneuver, striking the enemy from an unexpected direction and splitting their forces. Kale coordinated diversionary attacks elsewhere, ensuring that every move served both tactical and humanitarian goals. The victory was decisive. The enemy fleet, despite its size and strength, was broken and scattered. Colonies were defended, civilians were safe, and the coalition of warlords was forced to retreat, their morale shattered. Yet Saren knew that the true victory was not in destruction. It was in protection, in foresight, and in the bonds she had strengthened among her allies and people. As the fleets regrouped and the immediate danger passed, Saren walked along the observation deck of the Dominion's heart, Kale by her side. The stars stretched endlessly before them, infinite and serene after the chaos of battle. She felt exhaustion, but also exhilaration, knowing that the outcome had been shaped by both mind and heart, strategy and trust. "You led them brilliantly," Kale said softly. "But it was more than leadership. You inspired them. You gave them hope, courage, and the certainty that they were part of something larger than themselves. But today I realize that the heart, the courage to trust and connect, is just as powerful, perhaps more so." Her leadership became a model not only of strategic brilliance, but of empathy, fairness, and connection. Systems that had once been wary of human rule now looked to her for guidance, inspired by a ruler who combined intellect with heart. Kale continued to accompany her on these missions. Together, they resolved disputes, forged new alliances, and protected vulnerable colonies. Their partnership was seamless, built on mutual respect, understanding, and an unspoken bond that transcended duty. Saren's heart, once silent and cautious, had fully awakened, guiding her decisions alongside her mind. One evening, after a long day of negotiations and planning, Saren and Kale stood together in the quiet of the observation deck, watching the twin moons rise over the horizon of Vera Prime. The stars reflected in their eyes, and for a moment, the weight of leadership and the burdens of war seemed distant. "You know," Kale said, "the galaxy will never be quiet. There will always be threats, always be conflicts, always be challenges. But what you have learned, that is what makes you different. That is what makes humans extraordinary. To rule a galaxy, one must lead with the mind, the heart, and the courage to act with both." Now she knew that strength lay in trust, in connection, and in the courage to embrace human qualities fully. The final months of her reign in the Rim sectors solidified her legacy. Trade flourished, colonies prospered, and alien allies became steadfast partners. Humans were admired not only for their technological skill, but for their resilience, ingenuity, and humanity. Saren's strategies became legendary across the stars, but more importantly, her approach to leadership inspired loyalty, respect, and admiration in ways no single battle could achieve. Kale remained at her side throughout, a reminder that even the ruler of the galaxy needed partnership and trust. Their bond had grown from shared strategy to genuine companionship, built on understanding, respect, and a recognition of the human heart's power. Saren realized that her life would never be the same. She was no longer the solitary ruler she had once been, but a leader who could embrace both intellect and emotion without compromise. Years later, historians would look back on Saren Call's reign and marvel at her accomplishments. She had united star systems, defended the Dominion against overwhelming odds, and expanded human influence across the galaxy. But those who truly understood her legacy knew it was not just her brilliance that mattered. It was her courage to trust, to connect, and to embrace her humanity while ruling with unmatched intellect. Saren and Kale eventually forged a partnership that went beyond politics and strategy. They worked together, traveled together, and shared a quiet understanding that transcended words. They were equals in intellect, in courage, and in heart, a union that reflected the very qualities that made humans extraordinary. In the final reflection of her life, Saren stood once again on the observation deck of the Dominion's heart, looking out at the endless stars. She had faced threats, conspiracies, and impossible challenges. She had mastered fleets, won battles, and united civilizations. Yet the greatest victory was not in domination. It was in understanding, empathy, and the courage to follow the heart. The galaxy stretched before her, vast and unpredictable, but she was ready. She had learned that human strength was not only in strategy, ingenuity, or adaptability. It was in resilience, compassion, and the willingness to connect with others. That was what made humans extraordinary. That was what had allowed her to rule the galaxy and yet remain fully human. Kale joined her silently, his presence familiar and reassuring. Together, they looked at the galaxy, not as conquerors, but as stewards, guardians, and exemplars of what it meant to be human. Saren's heart, once silenced by duty, had found its voice. It had guided her decisions, inspired her actions, and illuminated the path forward. The stars glimmered, each one a reminder of possibility, hope, and the endless potential of humanity. Saren Call smiled, knowing that she had not only ruled the galaxy, she had embraced it with her mind, her courage, and her heart. And in doing so, she had shown that humanity, in all its complexity, was the greatest force in the universe. The galaxy was hers to protect, to guide, and to inspire. And for the first time, Saren understood fully that ruling with the heart was not a liability. It was the ultimate strength.